There's a phenomenon in psychology called the uncanny valley, that feeling of revulsion you get when something looks almost human but not quite. Your brain knows something is wrong even if you can't articulate what. Now imagine feeling that way about yourself, about seeing your own face, your own body, your own voice, but knowing with absolute certainty that it's not you. That's what happens at Mirror Lake in the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia. The lake has been there for thousands of years, its waters so still and clear they create perfect reflections. Too perfect. Because Mirror Lake doesn't just reflect, it duplicates. And if you're foolish enough to look at your reflection in those waters, you might find that reflection looking back with intentions of its own. This is the story of Emma Reeves, who thought the warnings were just local superstition, who gazed into Mirror Lake and saw herself staring back, and who discovered too late that some reflections want to be real more than you want to stay alive. Welcome to Mirror Lake. Don't look down. Emma Reeves had built a successful career photographing natural landscapes, and the assignment that brought her to Virginia's Appalachian Mountains seemed perfect. A nature magazine wanted a feature on hidden gems in the mid-Atlantic, and Emma had identified Mirror Lake as her centerpiece. Her research showed it was a small alpine lake, approximately 800 feet across, sitting in a bowl-shaped valley at 3,400 feet elevation. What made it special was its remarkable stillness. Surrounded by mountains that blocked most wind, the lake's surface was legendarily calm, creating what hikers described as the most perfect natural mirror you'll ever see. The photos Emma had found online were stunning, the lake reflecting the surrounding peaks and forest so flawlessly that it was impossible to tell where reality ended and reflection began. It was exactly the kind of breathtaking natural wonder her readers loved. What Emma's research hadn't turned up were the warnings, the local folklore, the reasons why, despite its beauty, Mirror Lake saw fewer than a dozen visitors per year. She drove to the trailhead on a crisp October morning, loaded down with camera equipment, camping gear, and supplies for 3 days. The hike to the lake was supposed to take 6 hours, following an old fire road that had been closed to vehicles for decades. At the trailhead, Emma encountered the only other car in the parking area, a battered pickup truck with local plates. An elderly man was sitting on the tailgate drinking coffee from a thermos. He watched Emma load her backpack with an expression of concern. "You heading up to the lake?" he called out. "That's the plan," Emma replied, adjusting her pack straps. The man stood slowly, his weathered face grave. "Might want to reconsider. That lake's not a good place." Emma had heard this before, locals trying to keep prime photography locations secret by spreading spooky stories. "I appreciate the concern, but I'm an experienced hiker. I'll be fine." "It's not the hiking I'm worried about." The man approached, and Emma could see he was genuinely troubled. "The lake, there's something wrong with it, something that goes back further than anyone knows. My grandfather told me stories, and his grandfather told him. You don't look at your reflection in that water. You understand me? Don't look down at the lake. Don't let it see your face." "Why not?" Emma asked, humoring him. "Because what looks back might decide it likes your life better than whatever it's got down there in the deep, might decide to take your place." The man's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. 17 people have disappeared from Mirror Lake over the years, went up alone, never came back, and 3 times that we know of, someone came back who looked right, sounded right, but wasn't right. Families knew. Something in the eyes was wrong, something in the way they moved. What happened to them? They vanished one day, just walked into the woods and never came out. And folks say they heard screaming from up near the lake that night, screaming that sounded like 2 voices, one human, one not quite. Emma smiled politely. "That's a great story, perfect for a campfire, but I really do need to get going. I want to reach the lake before dark." The old man sighed. "I can see you're determined. Just remember what I said. Don't look at your reflection, and if you do accidentally see it, don't stare. Don't let it get a good look at you. The lake needs details to make a copy." Emma thanked him and started up the trail, dismissing his warnings as local color. But as she hiked higher into the mountains, the old man's words kept echoing in her mind. "Don't look at your reflection. The lake needs details to make a copy." The trail climbed steadily through old-growth forest, the trees massive and ancient. Emma saw no signs of other hikers, no footprints, no trash, no worn spots where people usually stopped to rest. The trail was clear, but obviously little used, which struck her as odd for such a supposedly beautiful destination. After 5 hours of hiking, the forest opened up and Emma got her first view of Mirror Lake. She stopped dead, her breath catching. The photos hadn't done it justice. The lake was absolutely pristine, a perfect oval of water so clear and still it looked like polished glass. The surrounding mountains were reflected with such perfect clarity that the scene seems to exist in two worlds simultaneously, one above and one below, perfectly mirrored. Emma approached the shore slowly, mesmerized. The water was the clearest she'd ever seen. She could see straight to the bottom, smooth stones, aquatic plants, a school of small fish moving in formation. And the surface was like a mirror, showing her the sky above, the mountains around her, and she stopped herself from looking directly down. The old man's warning echoed, "Don't look at your reflection." "Ridiculous," Emma muttered, but still she kept her eyes on the distant shore rather than the water directly in front of her. She set up her camp on the eastern shore, deliberately positioning her tent away from the water's edge. As she worked, she caught glimpses of the lake in her peripheral vision. That impossible stillness, that perfect reflection, it was exactly what she'd come here to photograph. But she'd wait until morning. Better light then anyway. That night, Emma lay in her tent listening to the silence. Complete, absolute silence. No wind, no insects, no animal sounds, just the occasional creak of her tent fabric and her own breathing. It was unnerving in its totality. Even in remote wilderness, there was usually some ambient noise. At 2:17 a.m., Emma awoke to the sound of splashing. She lay perfectly still, listening. There it was again, the sound of something moving in the water, displacing it with regular strokes. Swimming. Emma unzipped her tent quietly and peered out. The moon was nearly full, illuminating the lake in silver light, and there, in the center of the lake, she could see ripples. Something was definitely swimming out there, creating concentric circles that spread toward the shore. But Emma couldn't see what was causing the ripples. No head breaking the surface, no visible body, just the disturbance in the water, as if an invisible swimmer was doing laps. The ripples moved closer to shore, closer to her tent. Emma watched, transfixed, as the disturbance reached the shallow water near her camp. The ripples stopped. The water became still again. And then, for just a moment, Emma saw something in the moonlight. A shape in the water, not swimming now, but standing, waist deep in the lake, perfectly motionless. It looked like a person. It looked like... Emma's breath caught. In the moonlight, the figure in the water looked exactly like her. Same height, same build, same hair. It was facing away from her, looking out at the center of the lake, but Emma could see its profile, and the resemblance was impossible to deny. As she watched, the figure slowly turned. Its face was in shadow, but Emma could feel its attention shift toward her tent, toward her. She jerked back inside and zipped the tent closed with shaking hands. That wasn't real. It couldn't be real. It was a trick of the moonlight, her imagination, her brain pattern matching in the dark and finding familiar shapes in random stimuli. But Emma didn't open her tent again that night, and she didn't sleep. Morning came with golden light and bird songs. The normal sounds of wilderness had returned with the dawn. Emma emerged from her tent exhausted, but determined to complete her assignment and leave. She'd get her photos and go. No more midnight hallucinations, no more letting local ghost stories get into her head. The lake was breathtaking in the morning light. Emma set up her tripod and wide-angle lens, composing shots of the mountains reflected in the water. She worked carefully, keeping her attention on the viewfinder rather than looking directly at the lake's surface. She got beautiful shots, perfect shots, exactly what the magazine wanted. She should have stopped there, should have packed up and hiked out. But the light was perfect, and she wanted one more shot. A self-portrait. Emma, standing at the shore, the lake and mountains behind her, captured in that magic hour of morning light. It would be the cover shot, the image that made the whole feature. She'd been planning it since before she arrived. Emma set up her camera on a timer and positioned herself at the water's edge. She'd frame it so the lake was in the background, but she wouldn't be looking down at the water. She'd be looking at the camera. Safe, no need to see her reflection. The camera beeped, counting down. Emma stood in position, the lake behind her, and smiled. 10 seconds. 5, 2, 1. Click. The camera captured the image. Emma walked back to check it on the display screen and felt her blood turn to ice. In the photo, Emma was standing at the shore exactly as she'd posed, but in the lake behind her, in the reflection, something was wrong. Her reflection wasn't looking at the camera. It was looking directly out of the photo, at Emma, and it was smiling differently than Emma had been smiling. Its expression was wrong, too wide, too knowing, too hungry. Emma looked back at the lake. The surface was perfectly still, reflecting the morning sky and mountains. No figure, no wrong reflection, just normal water. She looked back at the photo. Her reflection in the image was still staring out at her with that unsettling smile. "Okay," Emma said aloud, her voice shaking. "Time to leave." She began breaking down her camp with shaking hands, throwing things into her pack without her usual careful organization. She needed to get away from this lake, needed to get back to civilization where things made sense and reflections stayed in their proper place. She was rolling up her tent when she heard it, a voice, her voice, coming from the direction of the lake. "Why are you leaving?" Emma spun around. Standing at the water's edge, where she'd stood for the photograph, was herself, identical in every detail, same hair, same face, but the expression on that face was wrong, twisted with amusement. "What are you?" Emma whispered. "I'm you," the reflection said. It stepped forward, away from the water, moving with a fluidity that was almost but not quite human. "Or I will be. I've been watching you, learning you, studying every detail, and now I know you well enough to be you." "That's impossible." "The lake gives us form. It always has. We exist in the reflection, in the mirror world beneath the surface. Most people never look closely enough for us to learn them. But you stood there in the perfect light and let me see every detail. Let me learn your face, your stance, your micro-expressions. And then you photographed it, captured it, made it permanent." The thing smiled with Emma's face. "Thank you for that." Emma grabbed her pack and ran. Behind her, she heard laughter, her own laughter, but wrong. She made it maybe 30 yards before she tripped over a root and went down hard. Her pack scattered, camera equipment tumbling across the ground. Emma scrambled to her feet and kept running, abandoning everything, just trying to put distance between herself and the thing that wore her face. The trail was ahead. If she could just reach it, just get away from the lake. Something grabbed her arm. Emma screamed and jerked away, spinning to face her attacker. It was herself, the reflection. It had moved impossibly fast, somehow circling around to cut off her escape. Up close, Emma could see the subtle wrongness. The skin was too smooth, too perfect, like a computer rendering of a human. The eyes reflected light at slightly wrong angles, and when it spoke, Emma could see that its tongue was too long. "You can't run from yourself," the reflection said. Where would you go? How would you explain? I look like you. I sound like you. I can even access your memories. The lake showed me everything when you stood in the water last night. Yes, you were asleep, but I was there. I came out of the water and stood over your tent, listening to you breathe, learning the rhythm of your sleeping body. Emma felt sick. That figure she'd seen in the moonlight, it had been real, and it had been studying her. "What do you want?" Emma asked. "Your life," the reflection said simply. "I'm tired of existing only in reflections, only in that cold water. I want to be warm. I want to breathe air and feel sunlight. I want to live." It stepped closer, "And you're going to let me. You're going to walk back to the lake and look at your reflection one more time, a long, proper look. And when you do, we'll trade places. You'll go into the water, into the reflection, and I'll stay here, in your body, living your life." "No," Emma said, "I won't do it." "Then I'll take it," the reflection said, its face contorted into something terrible, something that wore Emma's features but belonged to something else entirely. "The lake has been doing this for thousands of years. Sometimes people trade willingly, sometimes they have to be forced, but it always ends the same way." The reflection lunged. Emma dodged, but the thing was fast, impossibly fast. Its hands closed around Emma's throat, and she felt cold radiating from its touch, a cold that went deeper than temperature, a cold that felt like drowning. They struggled, the reflection trying to drag Emma toward the lake, while Emma fought with everything she had. She grabbed a rock and swung it at the thing's head. The impact made a sound like cracking ice, and the reflection's face actually fractured, split like breaking glass, showing something dark and liquid underneath. The reflection shrieked and released her. Emma ran again, this time in a different direction, not toward the trail, but up the steep slope, into the forest. Maybe she could climb high enough to get above the lake, to escape its influence. Behind her, she could hear the reflection following, crashing through the underbrush. And then she heard something worse, multiple voices, her voices speaking in eerie unison. "We are all you, all the versions you've ever been, all the reflections you've ever cast. We all want to be real." Emma looked back and screamed. There were dozens of them, all perfect copies of her, all emerging from the forest, all converging on her position. Some looked recent, dressed like her, moving like her. Others were older, wearing clothes she'd owned years ago, their faces showing her at different ages. They were all her reflections, Emma realized. Every time she'd looked at the lake's surface, even peripherally, even in the background of photos, the lake had captured her, had made copies, and now those copies were manifesting, all of them wanting the same thing: to be real, to replace her. Emma climbed desperately, her hands grabbing at roots and rocks, pulling herself up the steep slope. The reflections followed, moving with unnatural coordination, working together to herd her back toward the lake. She broke through the tree line and found herself on a rocky outcrop overlooking the lake. Below, the water was perfectly still, perfectly clear, and in its surface, Emma could see even more reflections of herself, hundreds of them, all trapped in the mirror world, all staring up at her with hungry expressions. The reflections emerged from the forest behind her, cutting off retreat. There was nowhere left to go except down, back to the lake, back to the source. "Look at yourself," they said in unison. "Look at the water. Accept what you are. Accept what will become." Emma stood at the edge of the outcrop, the lake below, the reflections closing in. She had one choice left, one way to escape that might, just might, work. If the reflections needed her to look at the water, to complete the transformation, to facilitate the trade, then she'd deny them that satisfaction. She'd deny them the satisfaction of taking her life. Emma closed her eyes and stepped backward off the outcrop. She fell 30 feet and hit the water hard. The impact knocked the air from her lungs, and Emma sank into the cold depths of Mirror Lake. She opened her eyes underwater and saw them, all her reflections, swimming in the depths below her, reaching up with outstretched hands. But Emma didn't struggle, didn't try to surface. She let herself sink, descending into the cold and dark, denying the reflections the one thing they needed, her conscious choice to trade places. The water closed over her head. Emma's lungs burned. The reflections below grabbed at her, pulled at her, tried to push her back to the surface, but Emma went limp, accepting the water, accepting the darkness. If she drowned, there would be no trade. The reflections would have no life to claim. They'd be trapped in the lake forever, and Emma would at least have the satisfaction of denying them. Her vision darkened. Her lungs screamed for air. The reflections' faces surrounded her, all wearing expressions of rage and desperation. And then Emma's survival instinct took over. Against her will, her body fought back, kicking toward the surface, desperate for air. Her head broke the water, and she gasped, pulling in a huge breath. The reflections were waiting. They grabbed her, dozens of hands, all her own, dragging her toward the shore. Emma fought, but she was exhausted, oxygen-deprived, barely conscious. They pulled her onto the rocky beach, held her down, and forced her to look. "See yourself," they hissed. "See what you'll become." Emma's eyes focused on the water's surface, and there, in the perfect reflection, she saw herself looking back. But this reflection was different from the others. This one was crying. This one was terrified. This one was real. Because this one was her, the true Emma, trapped in the reflection while something else climbed into her body. Emma felt a terrible cold as something entered her, not from outside, but from within, as if her own reflection was rising up through her skin. She felt her body move without her willing it, felt her mouth smile without her choosing to smile, felt herself being pushed down, compressed, trapped in a smaller and smaller space inside her own mind. And then she was in the water, looking up, looking out from the reflection, watching her body stand, watched it brush off its clothes, watched it pick up her backpack and camera equipment with familiar, practiced movements. Her reflection, now in her body, now the real one, looked down at the water, looked at Emma trapped in the mirror world. "Thank you," it said with Emma's voice. "I'll take good care of your life. I'll be you better than you ever were." It turned and walked toward the trail, walked away from the lake, carrying Emma's equipment, wearing Emma's face, living Emma's life. And Emma remained in the water, in the reflection, one of hundreds of trapped souls who'd made the mistake of looking at Mirror Lake. She could feel them around her, all the others who'd been replaced over the centuries, all trapped in the cold mirror world beneath the surface. They welcomed her, showed her the depths where they existed, showed her how to move through reflections, how to appear in the water's surface when the right conditions arose, how to wait for the next hiker foolish enough to look. Because that was all Emma could do now. Wait, hope, that someday someone would come to the lake, would look at their reflection, and Emma could do to them what had been done to her. It was the only way to escape, to trade places with another victim, to climb out of the reflection and into a body, any body, just to be real again. Emma hated the thought, hated the idea of doing to someone else what had been done to her. But months passed, then years, and the cold of the mirror world seeped into her, changed her, made her more like the others, made her hungry for warmth, for life, for escape at any cost. When the next hiker came to the lake, a young man with a camera, looking for the perfect shot, Emma was waiting. She appeared in his reflection, wearing his face, learning his features, and when he looked down at the water, really looked, she reached up. The lake gave her form. The reflection became real, and Emma climbed out of the water wearing a stranger's body, breathing air again after 5 years trapped in the mirror world. She left the young man screaming silently in the reflection and walked toward the trail. His pack was waiting. His life was waiting. And Emma took it without hesitation, because that's what Mirror Lake does to you. It doesn't just trap you in reflections. It makes you willing to trap others. The cycle continues. The lake waits, and every year a few curious hikers ignore the warnings and come seeking perfect reflections. Most leave safely, never looking directly at the water, never giving the lake what it needs. But some look, some stare, some capture their reflections in photographs, and some never leave at all. Their bodies do, but the person inside isn't them anymore. The thing that wears Emma Reeves's face still lives in Baltimore. It kept her job, maintained her relationships, fooled her family and friends. Sometimes her mother comments that Emma seems different since that Appalachian hiking trip, more confident, more decisive, but also colder somehow, less emotional, less human. Emma's boyfriend broke up with her 6 months after she returned, saying he couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't know her anymore. He was right, of course. He didn't. The real Emma is still at Mirror Lake, trapped in the reflection, waiting for the next victim. She's been there for 13 years now. She's stopped counting the people she's tried to replace, stopped feeling guilty about it. The mirror world does that, strips away your humanity bit by bit until all that's left is hunger. And Mirror Lake is still there, still perfectly still, still creating flawless reflections. The warnings are still passed down by locals, still ignored by outsiders. Just last month, a photographer posted on social media about finding the most incredible hidden lake in Virginia and included coordinates. That post got 47,000 likes. Several people commented they were planning to visit. The real Emma saw the post. She can sometimes see through reflective surfaces, can glimpse the world outside her prison. She saw those comments and felt nothing. No guilt, no horror, just hope. Hope that some of those 47,000 people would come, would look, would give her another chance to escape. Because that's all anyone trapped in Mirror Lake wants. Another chance, another body, another life. And they're willing to wait forever, if necessary. The lake doesn't age, reflections don't die. They just wait, patient, hungry, ready. If this story has you avoiding mirrors tonight, hit that subscribe button for more terrifying tales from America's most cursed waters. And remember, be careful what you photograph. Be careful where you look. Some surfaces don't just reflect, they capture, they copy, they replace. If you ever visit a place called Mirror Lake or any body of water that's too still, too perfect, too clear, don't look at your reflection. Don't give it time to study you. Don't let it learn your face. Because once it does, once it captures enough details to duplicate you, you might find that your reflection has ambitions. Ambitions that involve wearing your skin and living your life. And you'll be the one trapped behind the glass, watching someone else be you, unable to do anything but wait for the next victim. Some reflections don't stay where they belong, and some waters have been claiming souls for far longer than humans have been around to warn about them. Stay safe and keep your eyes on the horizon, not the water.